Hey, so I just published a new article that I'm kind of excited about with Business Insider. It's called When I Moved Abroad, I Stopped Buying Groceries Like an American. Now I eat and shop better, and I've lost 100 pounds. So this is probably like I think my fourth or so, third or fourth article that I've written for Business Insider. And I actually didn't know that it was actually published. Um, I think it was maybe the last day of 2025 when they accepted my pitch, and it was due to them on January 6th. And usually they take a long time to be able to go from when you hand it in to actually publishing it. So that's why I wasn't looking for it. So it was actually somebody else, and I don't even know, that actually sent it to me to tell me that it was actually published. So shout out to you, because I probably would have gone another week without even seeing a thing. But I wanted to share that um, because um, while the story is about food and things that I have eaten, um, there's really a lot more to it. It's the story is about what has changed in my body, my level of creativity, and just an increasing sense of aging as a woman as I've gotten over 40. I'm 48, I'll be 49 in May. So as I move closer to 50 years old, I feel like I have a higher sense of agency over my life. And I really want for other women over 40 to be able to discover what that means. Um, I want women over 40 to be able to discover what that means, because I get emails whenever I do things online. I get women who say, "Oh, I want to be a freelance writer," but they never do the thing. They never do the things that they need to be able to get to their dreams. And I understand that everybody can't just pick up and move overseas like I have. If you don't know my background, I moved overseas permanently in 2018. I left the United States. That's my home country. And I moved to Thailand. And basically, I've been abroad ever since. I really haven't been back to the States since then. I went back to visit shortly after the pandemic, um, was over. And I went home to go visit my family for a month. But really, that's kind of been it. And I kind of enjoy my life overseas. At the present time, I live overseas in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen, and I enjoy it here, although this is not my home. I'm looking for my home city here in Mexico, and so I'll have more content about that um, in the coming months of this year. But I really wanted to be able to talk about how is it that women, and especially Black women, can feel more of a sense of agency over their lives, how to be able to find more creativity and freedom. If you want to be able to move overseas, you can do that. And being a writer has really offered me an opportunity to be able to do that for myself. Um, and so, for a lot of women over 40, we get told that you have to do a lot of things right. You have to do a lot of things, that you have to be able to do things in the right way. Like, you go to school. For many of us, we've gone to school, we've done all the things. Maybe you've gotten married, you've had your children, you've had all the job titles, you've made the money, um, and you're still bored. None of that has worked for you. None of those things have worked for you. You're kind of bored with your life, um, and you're looking for a way out. At least that was how I was feeling. for a time. When you take on the ideals and the goals of other people, you just have this never ending sense of being stuck. And what happens over the age of 40, and I remember my mom telling me this when I was in my 20s. And, just for context, my mom passed away when she was 49 of breast cancer 20 years ago. And so when I was in my 20s and she was in her 40s, she was expressing to me that when a woman hits over 40, that life changes. There's some sort of a chemical something that happens in the brain, and whatever it is that you were living with, whatever you were putting up with, whatever you were, just putting up with in your life, you lose interest in living like that anymore. And you start to desire to recreate something else. And that was really what happened for me, which is why I wound up moving overseas at 41. Because to be honest, I was afraid that I was going to end up like my mom. I didn't want to be dealing with cancer for 10 years and then losing my life at 40 and then begging God for another 6 months to a year to be able to live. And so that is really the push, the thing that pushes me to be able to live in the way that I want to. So a lot of women over 40, they feel like they've done all the things. They've done all the things that they were supposed to do, and they still haven't found any bit of happiness for themselves. That also shows up in the body. A lot of women are living in bodies that are inflamed. Perhaps you feel really tired. You feel stuck. You feel disconnected. You feel disconnected from Source, God, or however it is that you like to explain, your spiritual life. And a lot of times we get taught to believe that this is a personal failure of ours. And it's not. It's actually not. This is a very common thing for a lot of people, for various different reasons. And so I want to be able to come here to say, particularly for creative Black women over 40, you do not have to live like this, and you don't have to blame yourself. This is more of something that is related to your environment and not necessarily related to how you think or something that you have done. And there is a way to be able to get out of it. So yeah, as I was saying, I lived abroad since 2018, so it's 7 going on 8 years in June, July. And so I didn't move to lose weight. I know in my story, in my article, it says I lost 100 pounds. And while the weight was the problem, that wasn't my main thing. How it is that I wound up losing the weight and getting into this whole health journey when I moved overseas is that when I left the United States, I felt so bad in my body. And I was afraid that I was going to end up like my mom. I didn't really know what was wrong with me. I knew that I had fibroids. I knew that I had issues with anxiety. I just had all sorts of issues. I couldn't sleep. I had all sorts of issues and things that felt like it was just sort of going left with my body. And from everything that I was experiencing, it was very similar to what my mother had experienced at different points in her life. And I said, well, if I'm going to die early, I'm going to die my way. And so I moved overseas. But obviously 7 years later, I didn't die. I actually found my life. And so now I have a lot more to be able to live for. Um, so I didn't move overseas to be able to lose weight. I went overseas to be able to find my creative self, to be able to um, feel better in my body, to be able to find the energy to be able to do the things that I wanted to be able to do. And if I was, moving towards my end, so be it. I was willing to die in the pursuit of what it is that I wanted rather than die doing a thing that I didn't want to do anyway. Um, so I didn't move to lose weight or to be able to fix myself, but I did find that there were daily systems that I was able to tap into over time. I didn't do a bunch of things at once. So I found that I learned a lot about living in a place where access to food is really important. And it's not that I didn't know that food was important. I've always known that food was important. I actually started my food journey well before I even left the States. For some years, I had wanted to work in the food industry and had even taught healthy food, cooking, and things like that to kids. Worked at Whole Foods for a bit. And I taught cooking classes there at Whole Foods. I've written a slew of cookbooks for other, I guess you would call them influencers for like Instagram and things like that. I had trained with Aris Latham. If you are familiar with his work, he's famous for his work with raw food. And I thought that his work, and I still do think I admire that man greatly. His work is fascinating. To be able to learn how to be able to take raw foods and turn them into meals that are absolutely, oh, that man is so gifted. He really is. Just a gifted man. And even though I eat meat, the bulk of what I eat today is, vegetables and fruit. And a lot of what it is that he taught me about how to be able to prepare food that is raw is, I'm pulling it from what it is that he taught me. So I'm not a raw foodist, by any stretch of the imagination. But he taught me a lot of basics on how to be able to use raw food as a basis for what I like to eat, what it is that I like to prepare. And the few opportunities these days, I don't do a lot of teaching, but if people ask me, I'll share what it is that I know. I've also, over time, I've learned a lot of walking and then eventually running. I used to walk for hours when I lived in Vietnam. I would go out into town, spend the day working at like a co-working place, and then I would walk a couple of hours back to my apartment. And so I lived in Da Nang in Vietnam, which is in central Vietnam. And so there was this beautiful beach that, you could walk. Child, I used to be out there at 10 o'clock at night. 10 o'clock at night walking along the beach, and there really wasn't a lot of people, and I never got bothered. Not even remotely. I would walk and I would put my earphones on, and it was a great night. Be able to walk all the way back. And then eventually I moved to Rwanda. In Rwanda, I started to pick up my walking, and my walking turned into running, just because East Africa is the place where some of the best runners in the world are. And so I was inspired by the environment there, to be able to run with the local people. And so I did 5Ks, I did 10Ks, and then when I moved to to Mexico, I did my first half marathon. I cannot believe that Helena Black, that's me. I cannot believe that Helena Black actually signed up for that thing and I actually completed it. I just, sometimes I look back at the last 7 years of my life and I cannot, I'm astounded by the things that I have done for myself. It's like this isn't even something that I'm doing for other people. And that's so important, to be able to feel good about yourself, to feel proud about the things that you have done that you would never have thought in 10 million years that you would have been even had the capacity to be even to do some things. And in my list, I have a long list of things that I want to be able to do, and I'll get into that into another time. I've learned ways of being able to mitigate stress. You know, stress is something that we can't get rid of 100% of the time, but a lot of things I have gotten rid of. A lot of things I have gotten rid of that were just sort of self-induced stress. Namely, you know, being in poor relationships. I don't accept poor relationships anymore. Before it was, you know, being in a poor marriage, some familiar relationships were stressful, work relationships were stressful. So I've gotten rid of all of that. And so now, you know, I've got my own business, writing, being a writer and teaching writing to other people. And that in itself, it comes with stress, but it's a stress that I choose. And there's a big difference between that type of stress and, you know, stress that I just sort of, you know, before I sort of felt like I was just sort of stuck with. And I'm not stuck. I choose the level of stress that I have. And before, like, I do things like meditation or breathing and all sorts of other things to be able to help to mitigate some of that stress that I would that I come across now in the life that I choose. I learn how to plan. You know, you plan certain things in your life, and it helps you. You plan certain things in your life, and it helps you to be able to get rid of a lot of stress that you don't have to think about. So yeah, and so I live life at a pace that I enjoy. So basically, there's been 3 lessons that I have taken away just from, you know, this life that I am living. And one is that health after 40 is more about your environment and not necessarily about willpower. So health after 40 is more about your environment and not necessarily about willpower. I cannot tell you how many people I have, you know, friends, acquaintances, you know, people who come to me for coaching. Your lives would be so much easier if you had the courage to rearrange your life from start to finish, which is easier said than done. And I had help from a slew of people to be able to have the life that I have now. Now, the me moving overseas, that was a big jump. That was a super huge leap that I took on my own. But in order for me to be able to keep my life, it would have been very easy to be able to go overseas, run out of money, and then have to come back home and go back to the life that I knew before. But because I was dedicated to creating something new, I knew that I had to be able to find ways to be able to keep it. And so I started off with working with a few healers that I worked with when I was in Thailand. I learned a lot by reading and going to, healing events. I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of talking to people who were healers and learning from them. And I was just very selfish with my time. One thing I can say about living overseas, I got very, very selfish about how it is that I treated myself. And it's easier to do that because I live on the other side of the planet at that time in Thailand. When you live on the other side of the planet, I don't have to involve my brain with everybody else's stress, everybody else's poor choices, everybody else's complaints about, stuff that they put themselves in. So it was easier for me to be able to do that. In the article for Business Insider, I did a lot of this particular article for Business Insider. I focus on grocery shopping in particular, and really I don't want to say grocery shopping isn't a thing, but the way that people shop in different countries is very, very different from how we tend to do it in the States. Not everybody, of course, but for a lot of people it is. And so when people in the United States, when we go grocery shopping, it's like you got to buy for the whole month. Some people may have a few freezers full of stuff and still you feel like you need to go grocery shopping every week because you got to stock up the food. We got to stock up the food. We got to stock up the food. But when you go overseas, what I realized was that when I tried to do that, when I tried to go food shopping for a week at a time, because everything looks so great when you go overseas. Everything looks so fresh. You want to buy everything. But what I had to learn how to do was to be able to take a step back and really make a choice about what it is that I'm eating today and maybe tomorrow. I buy food. Let's see, I probably buy food enough for 2, maybe 3 days at a time. And that's really because the food spoils so fast. Like the food is super fresh, and this is in all the 10 countries that I've lived in. I've lived in 10 countries since 2018. I've actually lived in more than that, but I'm saying in this 7-year space that I've been gone from the States, I've lived in 10 countries. And so, the way that I go food shopping has changed, and because of the freshness of the food, I don't get stuff like frozen vegetables. Like, what the hell is that? I don't even buy frozen vegetables. I don't know how people even eat frozen vegetables. I rarely ever buy frozen fruit. That's super, super rare. Most of the fruit that I buy is generally fresh. I don't buy ultra processed foods. I can say that since I live here in Mexico, a lot of the stuff, a lot of crap that we have in America is also available in Mexico. Potato chips, cakes, and cookies and things like that. But I always choose to get the more healthier, to get the healthier versions of things, or to be able to just make stuff in my own kitchen. I always spend time to be able to read the labels, which of course is fun. When you are in another country. But so, like today I bought a bag of pita bread. And it's a whole wheat bread. And so it's literally whole wheat, water, maybe yeast. I don't know but it's like 3 ingredients. And so even though the labels of the things that I buy that are packaged you know, the ingredients are so basic and simple. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. The only thing I really have to worry about when I'm buying are things like spices. The spices, sometimes you have to pay attention and look at spices. Um, I tend to buy one ingredient spices like a rosemary or something I just bought. Or if I want garlic powder, I gotta look to make sure that it's only garlic powder and not salt and all sorts of other stuff. You know, there are a few mixed spices that I have. Like I have a za'atar seasoning, which is a popular Turkish or Middle Eastern spice. It doesn't taste like, you know, what I had when I lived in Turkey, but it's close enough. I actually like to be able to make that for like breakfast. I put it on the pita bread with an egg and put za'atar spice and maybe some tomatoes. Fresh sliced tomatoes and a tad bit of salt. It's delicious. I love it. And what else? I have a jerk spice, a jerk seasoning that I always have to doctor up because it's, you know, it's a dry seasoning. It's not the best. I actually know how to make jerk seasoning from fresh. I just hate my blender. I hate my blender because I'm not living in the apartment where I feel like I can just go out and just buy the kitchen stuff that I actually really want to be able to work my kitchen in the way that I want to. So I don't have the blender. And so just to save my time, I just went and got the jerk seasoning and I have to doctor it up. I have a big bottle of allspice, which is one of the major ingredients in a good jerk seasoning. If it doesn't have allspice, it ain't jerk. You can't just throw some cayenne or, you know, some habanero peppers, you know, with some salt and pepper and call it jerk. That's not it. One of the major flavors in a good jerk is allspice. So I add extra jerk or add extra allspice and a few other things. And so I might make that with like, you know, some chicken or something, chicken or fish. I never buy stuff like salad dressings. I eat a salad probably almost every day. I love a good salad. It's not the only thing that I eat. And salad doesn't mean, you know, just lettuce and cucumbers. Like today, I made a salad. I wish I had taken a picture of it because it was so pretty. But it was a warm quinoa salad. Because even though I live in Playa del Carmen in the Caribbean in Mexico, this is the colder season. So you know it's nice to be able to have warmer foods during this time of year. And so I had some warm quinoa. I mixed in some chickpeas that I cooked. I rarely ever buy jarred or canned beans, just because I don't like I don't like what's added to it, and I don't like the texture of it. I like my beans cooked from dry. And what else did I have in there? I had some steamed, a large beet that I steamed. And then I added some green onion, a few other things in there. Some green onion. I think I added a little jalapeno. I added tomatoes, purple cabbage, a little bit of purple cabbage, and a bunch of finely chopped parsley. I wanted it to kind of be like a tabbouleh, except tabbouleh has bulgur wheat, which I don't care for, which is why I used the quinoa. And I made a dressing with a couple of limes that I juiced, some extra virgin olive oil, a little salt, a couple of finely chopped garlic cloves, and then I added just a small bit of ginger, fresh ginger that I finely chopped. And that ginger just took it over the top. It was so delicious. I loved it. It was so good. And that was like my dinner. That was my dinner. I thought I was going to want to put something extra with it, like an egg or something, but what I had was delicious. What I had was delicious. So yeah, I do that. Sometimes people talk about eating smaller portions. I don't eat small portions. I'll be real with you. I eat big ass plates. One of these days I'm gonna show you my bowl, but I have a salad bowl that's probably about this tall, about as wide as the screen, maybe even a little wider. You know, it almost as wide as my shoulders. And so when I make stuff, salads in particular, I put salads in there. Now, you know, if I'm eating, you know, something with meat, you know, that I won't fill it with meat, but stuff like, you know, that's a bunch of vegetables and the main thing of what I'm eating is a salad. That's what goes into the big bowl. And so I like high volume of food. Sometimes people like to talk about, oh, you know, I don't eat that much. I don't eat that much. And that's why you gain weight. Because you don't eat enough. You need to eat more. But I like to be able to eat. I'm an eater, and I don't make any apologies for what it is that I'm eating. Now, because I eat real food every day, I eat real food at pretty much every meal that I eat. I'm able to eat large portions of food because they're high in nutrient density. And they keep me fuller longer, so I don't, like, it looks like I'm eating a ton, but it's actually not. You know, cabbage and quinoa and beets, and you know, that those things are looking at my hair. I just cut a lot of my hair off today just because I was just sick of it looking like a mess and having to wear a scarf, but I cut off a good portion of it, and so hopefully it will grow back better than what it was. But anyway, I was talking about I eat larger portions, and also I really love the fact that I choose walking in places, or I choose to live a life where I walk a lot. Walking is a large part of how it is that I choose to stay well. And so one of the things that I do almost every day of the week, I walk between 5 and 10 kilometers, between 5 to 10 kilometers a day, depending on how I'm feeling, closer to 10. And so I live in places where walking is something that you can do, you know. And I'm lucky to live in places where that are beautiful. You know, it's kind of, it's difficult to be interested in walking when you live in a place that, you know, that's just sort of pure concrete or there's nothing really to look at. So, you know, it's not even like, you know, I'm out here doing some hard cardio. I don't always walk, and I don't always run. As a matter of fact, in the last year, I've had issues with perimenopause, and I've had to put a halt on a lot of the running that I was doing. So I haven't even done running in a while, but I have done running or walking longer distances almost every day. And I want to be able to get back to running. I feel like I can get back to running now. I had a lot of digestive issues and stuff that I had to rearrange. But I'm a lot better now, which is why you see me doing the content for a good 6 months since last summer. For a good 6 months, like I was just, my main focus was fixing my digestion. You know, if you want to hear that, maybe I'll do another video on that another day. So when I add all of this to say when when you feel like your environment is supporting you, um, your nervous system has a chance to relax and your body will respond to it. So if you need to lose weight, you'll lose the weight naturally. It'll still take time. One of the things that I notice in at least in American culture is that we want to lose weight so fast, and we don't really realize that we've spent so much time abusing our bodies so hard that that losing the weight is going to be a process. And so if you change your habits, and like I'm not interested in daily weights. I have no idea what the hell I weigh. I think I weigh maybe about 220. Sometimes people think I weigh a little less than that. They think I weigh under 200. I'm 5'9". And I can probably stand to lose more weight. But honestly, that's not really part of my goal. My goal is to be a stronger runner and to be able to have enough energy to be able to sustain my business, my creativity. Really, that's it. And in the process, the habits that I've built over time, reducing the stress, the eating well, the exercise regimen, the weight will just sort of rearrange itself over time. So on to the next lesson. Your creative energy is directly tied to your daily logistics. So my life is super simple. What my life used to look like before I left the U.S., I was always busy. I was up at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to a job that I didn't feel like being at. A lot of time I spent, I spent time at a job. I used to work in education before I'd actually started my freelance writing business. And so that was just, I liked the work. It was just a lot of the times it was the people, it was the administration that you got to work under that really caused the stress. Excuse me. So a lot of the things that made my life stressful was because I was just doing too much. For a time, I was also working on a doctorate degree that, eventually I just kind of got kicked out of because I just had too much stuff going on and trying to maintain my grades in a doctorate program that honestly I wasn't really enjoying. I have a master's degree in education, and then I switched schools to go to another place to be able to study adult education in higher ed. And I wish I had just stayed at the school where I completed my master's degree. I would have, because they gave me more freedom in that program, I probably would have had a better chance of finishing it. And then when I moved to another school, and it was just a totally different experience, and I didn't like the experience because I didn't have the freedom to be able to study in the way that I wanted to. So yeah, my life is a lot simpler. What I eat is simpler. I gave you examples of being able to eat simply. My food shopping isn't stressful. My food is, how can I say this? My food is culturally relevant to what it is that I like. And so I eat a lot of things that are embedded in African American culture. But I've also learned to incorporate a lot of the things that I've learned about healthy food and healthy eating from a lot of different cultures. And so my food is really kind of all over the place. It's always embedded in that the things that I learned, particularly from my great-grandmother, who I learned a lot from watching her and participating in taking care of a garden that she had in the spring and summer and a little bit into fall. She ate a lot of okra and tomatoes and onions, and she raised all sorts of everything. It was a large house, but the plot that she had to be able to grow all her vegetables, wasn't particularly large. And she grew everything in that space: collard greens, green beans, cabbage, everything. She had everything back there. And so I learned a lot of stuff from her. And also from my grandmother. My grandmother's actually still living. She lives in the Atlanta area. And I'm hoping that I can get a chance to visit her before this year is over. I have the time to be able to go and visit my grandma. So yeah, my food is culturally relevant, and I love that I'm able to add all the stuff that I learned from all the different cultures that I've had the pleasure of learning in going to their markets, and experimenting with a lot of the foods that are readily available in other places. Like here, I'm learning how to be able to use different chili peppers, how the use of corn and cornmeal is used here. So when I move and get to my new kitchen, like right now, I'm just sort of using like tortillas that I can buy. I can buy fresh handmade tortillas here, and the taste is so much different from the crap that you get in the United States. How people eat at Taco Bell, freaking beyond me. It's disgusting. But to have like a nice smoky corn flavor on a tortilla, it's the best. And so a lot of my life and how I've been able to lose weight and to be able to find my creativity is usually attached to the logistics of how it is that I live my life. And so because of that, my creativity has become available to me again, because I have gotten rid of all the other stuff that didn't belong. The dissatisfaction with the job, dissatisfaction with the relationships, some of my family relationships. I won't say that I've cut people off, but I don't have to engage with those I don't need to be able to engage with. And so that leaves more space for me to be able to create the thing that I want. And I can't tell you how much that makes a difference. I talk to people sometimes who is just so frustrated with these other people and other people and circumstances that really you just need to get rid of. If you get rid of this shit, get rid of the shit. Find the money. Find the money to help people who can help you get rid of the shit that doesn't belong. Your life would be so much better. Just invest, find it. Just go find the money to be able to invest in the money and the resources that you need to be able to get rid of the shit. And your life would be better. And then the third lesson that I have learned is that midlife, for women over 40, Black women over 40, midlife is the time to redesign the system and not necessarily fix yourself. I talked a little bit about this already. A lot of times we get told to be able, we got to try harder without being told how. And so what a lot of us wind up doing is we try harder at the things that are not working because that's the only thing that you know how to do. And which is why you need to be able to hire a person to help you break the decisions that perhaps you are fearful of making for yourself. Yeah, so when I started and I started working with an herbalist, he put me on mostly a fruit detox diet. And so it was like low glycemic fruit and some things like pumpkin and eggplant or tomatoes and things like that I was able to eat. Stuff like olives. He considered all those things to be fruit. Anything with seeds in it, I was able to have. And so without even though I knew that those things were good for me, conceptually I understood that those things were good for me. But what I would do, my pattern was every time I get a little bit of stress, every time something pissed me off, every time I felt behind or sad or felt like I wasn't moving forward, I would just go to my old pattern of food so that I could feel better. And so hiring somebody to help me was the thing that helped me to make changes in my life that I know like hell I could not do it by myself. And you don't have to do it forever, but because I worked with him, this one particular gentleman I work with him for 6 months. It's only supposed to be 3, and it wound up being 6 months. And then when that 6 months was over, I actually took all the lessons and things, the lessons and the routines that I learned, and it takes you some time to be able to implement on your own without the coach, the person that's teaching you. That takes time. Some people, it's like, they want to be able to do they enter a program, and they want to be promised results. And you can learn, you can read the books, you can do all those things, but until you've learned how to implement those things during times when you are not at your best, when you're not feeling well, when you're feeling like, when you have more stress or things in your life are giving you a challenge, that's when all those old lessons become reinforced. And that's how you become a different person. When all of those old lessons are reinforced, that's when, through the challenges in your life, that's how you really figure out, okay, who am I and what am I really doing? Or is this just some basic, smoothie detox, or are we living like this? And so what you're really doing is you're interrupting the structure of your life and you're creating something absolutely new. And that is the part, I swear to God, that's really the hard part. That's the hard part. And in the beginning, probably in the first year or two, that was probably the hardest. And it's still a process, 7 going on 8 years later. But I've learned to enjoy this process because I recognize that it's a process of something that I have to look forward to, because I'm becoming the woman that I have always wanted to be, the woman that I've always known was there. I just needed a hand to be able to get to the other side, to get to her. And so, I think we're always changing, and so we're not finished until we're finished when we're dead. You're always in a process of becoming a new person. But it's good to be able to have someone to help you during these various steps. Yes, to be able to help you to move faster, but just to be able to have somebody to be able to talk to while you're going through the changes. One of the things, well, I won't say that. So it might involve a change in where you live. It might involve cutting some people off, even if it's, even if it's temporary, or hell, even if it's permanent. Child, a lot of y'all need to cut people out of your lives permanently. You just do. So I mean, you just do. You need to be able to make permanent changes in how you eat. This is what I do want to say though. I say from the beginning that when I was put on a most largely fruit detox diet when I started, and for some reason, 7 years later, people still think they want to connect me to what I was doing 7 years ago, and that because I eat other things, that somehow I'm a fraud or I'm not doing what I claim that I do. And I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I just decided that I don't need to be a fruitarian. I never claimed to be a fruitarian. I was a vegetarian, or even a vegan for some time, particularly when I was in Rwanda, and that was mostly because at that time during the pandemic while I was there, for me it was a challenge to be able to find meat that that hadn't gone bad. Like the meat was always making me sick. And so I just stuck to fruits and vegetables, and that's where my salad habit came from. Because the fruits and vegetables in Rwanda were just so highly, they were so dense in nutrition that honestly I didn't need anything else. And even then, from time to time, I would get fish. There was an African restaurant, a West African restaurant in Kigali, that would make a dish called a yassa poisson, which is I guess more of a Senegalese dish. That is a whole roasted fish with an onion sauce with rice. Every once in a blue moon, maybe every 3 to 4 months, I would buy that. But that was it. I didn't have things like tuna fish or even canned sardines because I found that what I was getting there, the salt in there bothered me too much. The salt in the can in tin items, it was too much salt for me. So I didn't eat those things. And also in how my days are shaped, I live the way that I want to. I work according to my energy. So yeah. So those were my 3 lessons. 1, health after 40 is really about your environment and not your willpower. Lesson 2 was that your creative energy is directly tied to your daily logistics and what it is that you are doing on a day-to-day basis. And also, thirdly, midlife is your time to redesign your system, redesign your environment, to be able to take a good look and to be able to say, okay, what's working and what isn't, and what is my process for getting rid of the stuff that does, so that I have more space to be able to get rid of the stuff that doesn't work, so that you have more space available to get into what does work. So yeah, if you want to be able to check out the article that I wrote in Business Insider, I'll go ahead and leave a link to that if you care to read it. Go ahead and read that. But yeah, I'm excited about what it is that I'm doing. This is part of my creative life. I've always wanted to be able to write about my life and food. My goal for this year is to be able to get some of my stories into some of the bigger, more food related outlets. But that's all in my pitching process, which is one of the things that I offer. I do teach people, women in particular, women writers over 40, Black women writers over 40. Whether you consider yourself to be a writer now, or you would like to be a writer and you want some hand holding into figuring out what is the next step for you, you can just kind of I have a class coming up on February 22nd, 2026. It is an 8-week group course on practicing your pitching. You're actually writing the pitch, crafting the pitch, perfecting your pitches, and sending them out to editors so that you'll be able to figure out in real time how this process works for you. And so by the time you get to the 8 weeks, you will know what to do, and you will be well on your way to being either a freelance writer or some of the people that I work with, they have businesses, whether they're consultants or trainers, and they have a voice and they want to be able to share it with people to larger audiences, and so they want to be able to get into magazines like Business Insider, and all sorts of other places. So this would be a really great place for you to be able to develop a writing routine that actually will help you to be able to practice your messaging, to be able to practice what it is that you want to be able to say to the public. I'm a nonfiction book coach by trade now. And I like teaching magazines because it is a small way to be able to share your message with the world. Sometimes people come to me and they say, they want to be able to write a book. But the thing is, they've never actually tried talking to people about the thing that they want to be able to write about. And so I actually think it's a good idea for people to take the time to be able to practice what it is that they want to say in magazines first, to be able to get a reaction from other people, from editors who actually do this work all the time. What are editors saying, or how are they responding to the messages that you're sending out into the world? Once your ideas are published, what sort of a reaction are you getting from readers? And is it the reaction that you expected? Is it the reaction that you want? Those things are important. And so I'll leave a link. You'll see a link to my Pitching Magazine's 8-week group course. And then I also have a freebie. If you're not ready to join the class, but you do want to stay connected, I do have a freebie. It's called 5 Successful Magazine Pitches, and they are 5 real life pitches that I actually sent out to editors. And it's the pitch, and then on the bottom of it is the actual link to the article that was published based on the pitch that I sent, which is absolutely invaluable, just so that you can see the process of pitching and how it leads to an actual article in an online environment, and sometimes the actual print version in a magazine. I've done a few of those as well. So yeah, that's what I have. Check out the links in the description box. You'll be able to have access to all of those things. My name is Halana Black. I hope you have a wonderful day. Get into your writing, get into your creativity. Who start defining who the creative woman you are meant to be in this stage of your life. And I look forward to having a deeper conversation about this. See you in the next video.